Good afternoon, my friends. This is the Grim Flayer. Hope you're all doing very well today, and welcome to Grim Tidings number 2, where we are talking about the future of Companion in Modern, as well as the concept of mastery, and how mastery as an attraction to a format like Modern plays into people's enjoyment and people's longevity and desire to stick with the format relative to other factors. And I know, let's address something before we get into those subjects. Many of you have said that the audio is really clear, and that's cool. And many of you have also told me that the audio is too low, and that is because I am just recording this outside on my phone, and I know the audio is too low. Do I care? Do I care? No. No, I don't care at all. I'm just kidding. Of course I care, but I don't have a microphone that hooks up to my iPhone yet. I will work on that, but for now, the Grim Tidings number 1 was so well received despite that issue that I wanted to make more for you, and in the meantime, I will be looking into, an iPhone microphone, maybe something that clips to my shirt. If you have any experience with that out there, please do let me know. If you have a product you can recommend, leave it in the comments below. I'll do my own research, but if anybody has experience, I would be happy to avail myself of your knowledge. So anyway, guys, let's talk about Companion in Modern in reference to the recent non-announcement of Monday, the whatever it is, May 18th, something like that. Let's get into it. Alright, my friends, so I'm certainly not going to read you the whole announcement, but I will read a couple relevant parts, and I will offer my commentary on them. So, of course, they have made ban list changes in Legacy, Vintage, and Brawl, but they are going to continue to watch the evolution of the metagame in other formats. As of now, we are seeing a diverse and dynamic metagame that changes from week to week in Standard, Pioneer, and Modern. Before determining whether any changes are necessary and what the right changes would be, we need to see the metagame come closer to an equilibrium state. So, in theory, this is a perfectly sensible thing to do. Historically, I have defended this practice from Wizards. I have defended it on this channel. You go back about a year ago, certainly anything before that, this was my general narrative when people were calling for bans or when bans were actually taking place, or not taking place as the case may be. I often said, look, it actually makes a lot of sense to wait and see, because if we are living in relative stability as far as Modern is concerned, if they are curating the format and they are caretaking the format in such a way that we can step away for a little while and we can come back, if life obligations get in the way or if we just want to take a break, we can come back and our mastery is not lost. That's going to branch into our second topic, but we'll leave that for the second half of the video. But if we have a stable format, if we have a format that is slow to change, and when it does change, the changes are subtle, and again, it rewards mastery, and it rewards longevity, and it rewards investment, both in terms of finances and in terms of your time and loyalty to the format and to the game as a whole, then we, as a community, should grant them in reciprocity, in the spirit of, okay, we see what you're doing, we will give you the time. We will let you make absolutely certain that the ban is needed. And once you determine that the ban is needed, we will let you have even more time to make absolutely certain that the ban is the correct one. Because again, if the format is stable, then we can weather the potential problems for a little while in exchange for stability in regard to the ban policy, as well as to the printing policies, as well as to the baseline of the format. So that was always my perspective. But as you all know, unless you've been living under a rock, and not the good kind of rock, not the green-black rock that we all love on this channel, then you know that we no longer have that stable Modern format. Ever since War of the Spark kicked things off, and the power creep has shot us forward into the space age, and we are just like not... Every format, people are just every new set rather, people are holding their breath and saying, what is this going to do to the Modern format? And more often than not, the new cards just blow the old ones out of the water and just spawn new archetypes, which is not a bad thing in and of itself, but they render old cards obsolete at an alarming rate, they render old archetypes obsolete at an alarming rate, and they are also generally geared toward resource generation, which I maintain and will continue to preach is the important key to understanding why Modern is leaving so many people dissatisfied now relative to how it was like 2 years ago. Resource generation is too good. It reduces variance, it punishes traditional interaction, and it makes games feel all samey. It also, in many ways, makes your decisions matter less. But I don't want to get too far off on a tangent like I'm known to do. The point here, we'll return to the point, is that we no longer need to give them this grace period of, okay, take your time, make sure the ban is absolutely spot on before you take any action. We don't want to act rashly. They, in my view, are acting rashly with all of these new printings, and therefore to leave us twisting in the wind using the same old excuse about, well, we need the format to reach equilibrium, and we need more time, and we need more data, doesn't really fly anymore. Doesn't really do it for me. We no longer have the baseline stability of the format to lean upon and from which to give them this grace period. I hope that made sense. As always, my friends, if you agree or if you disagree, please do let me know. That's my take on that data point that they offer here. The next point I want to mention that comes from their write-up is this. They say, while we are not currently seeing problematic win rates in Standard, Pioneer, or Modern from decks using companions, we are looking at overall metagame share and potential for repetitive gameplay. So the second half of that sentence is fine. Good. I'm glad that they're not only considering win rates, because the first part of the sentence about the win rates doesn't really matter. The same day that this article, this announcement came out, there is also a piece of data that got popularized saying that in the most recent Modern Challenge, 87% of decks use companions. And this is basically the baseline number or something thereabouts across all the formats, and the notion that win rate data is meaningful when a brand new mechanic that also feels very different from traditional Magic, by the way. That's what we talked about in the previous video, how many people just feel like Companion is not playing 60 card constructed anymore. It feels like something else, like something new, something different, and nobody really asked for that, frankly. When the Companion is so ubiquitous in the format, looking at win rates against non-Companion decks is kind of missing the entirety of the point. Now, it's not that they shouldn't go into it with all data points, armed with all possible data, but that in and of itself is not really a valid reason to refrain from taking action, in my view. Final point to address from the article is this. They say, if we see signs of long-term health issues resulting from a high metagame share of companion decks, we are willing to take steps up to or including changing how the companion mechanic works. So, that's pretty big news. Some people have said that's the most encouraging thing. That's the best thing we've seen from this announcement. I kind of have to agree, at least, of course, we're talking from the modern perspective here, as always, on the channel. And that means that they're not closing the door. They are leaving the door wide open to a companion errata. And whether or not that is optimal, I don't know. I don't know whether we want to set that precedent or whether it's better to ban the mechanic altogether, or whether it's even fair to ban the mechanic altogether, because you could argue that some companions are interesting and are going to be non-invasive, non-format warping. Like, let's say for the sake of argument they ban both Lurrus and Yorion. It does not therefore necessarily follow that all of the other companions will therefore fill the gap and will still have 87% of modern challenge decks featuring a companion, just the next best ones. I don't think that's the case, and maybe you ban down the line a couple more companions if you have to. Maybe we're left with a few that are genuinely interesting, genuinely reasonable, genuinely niche. That is the thing. If you are going to introduce a mechanic that allows a person to more or less play Commander in Modern, or play Commander in other 60-card traditional constructed formats, this should be a once-in-a-while thing. It should be like, oh, cool, the opponent is doing something different. The opponent has brewed up a niche strategy, and we will see how they can leverage this free 8th card and how they can mitigate their disadvantages. It should not be the new norm. I am very firm on that. Obviously, that's not a hot take. Most people would agree with me on that. But, yeah, it's interesting to determine among ourselves, not that we really have any say, whether it would be ideal to set a precedent like that of making an erratic to companion, or whether it's better to ban specific offenders, or whether it is indeed better to ban the mechanic as a whole. I am receptive to arguments all along the line. There, the one thing that I am very firm on, that I mentioned in the previous Grim Tidings, is that we should not ban an enabler. We should not ban an old card, a healthy, well-designed, interesting format staple like Mishra's Bauble. that would be the wrong decision to ban an enabler. That would be the wrong decision to ban an older card, when you'll just have to deal with Companion a little bit down the road anyway. So that is those are our grim tidings about the Modern announcement, or lack thereof in the case of Modern. Again, we do have relative assurance that something will be done, and the door is wide open. We'll just have to see what they do. If you have a proposal, my friends, please do let me know in the comments below. You never know who's going to watch something like this. You never know who is going to read something like this, and maybe you have the optimal solution for how we fix Companion in Modern. So for the second half of this video, I'd like to talk about the concept of mastery and how it compares, how it measures up, and how desirable it is relative to the excitement of change and the need to keep things fresh, and of course the financial need for Wizards to continue producing new product that sells. Let's not forget that. That is definitely something that's required to keep the game alive. It's easy to criticize profit as a motive, but the game would not exist without profit, so we have to deal with reality in that sense. But there is an equilibrium, there is an Aristotelian mean, there is a balance to be struck between change for the sake of keeping things fresh and keeping things lively, and again, keeping the company healthy, and change for the sake of change. Change going over the top and uprooting the traditions that are very, very important to a lot of people and keep a lot of people anchored and invested in the game. So the more the change uproots old format staples and displaces old format pillars, we have, like, how do I want to put this? It's kind of like knowledge gets lost. It's almost the equivalent of like an ancient text being lost when an old library burns. Things like this. When you have people's decks get displaced or banned out of existence or just power crept out of existence, a non-zero number of those people leave the format never to return, or leave the game never to return, or maybe if they do return, they're going to return in a very long time when they have basically sold their collection and then they get pulled back in. They're basically pressing the reset button. But the point here is we lose some continuity, we lose some of the established order. And again, do you need to freshen things up every now and then? Absolutely. But do you need to uproot things every 3 months? Absolutely not. That is highly undesirable. And this also completely precludes the ability to achieve mastery. So what do I mean by mastery? What I mean by mastery is that in a stable format that is slowly and subtly changing, a master will thrive. Somebody who knows his or her archetype inside and out, who also knows the format inside and out, and who can reach deep into the spice rack to find a piece of hidden tech, a piece of fringe tech, something that's like number 45 on the maybe board, right? Raking Canopy, that's the card I was trying to think of. It is an enchantment for 1 GG. Whenever a creature with flying attacks you, Raking Canopy deals 4 damage to it. Do you remember during the meta when Bant Spirits was popular, how some very, very spicy BG Rock and other BGX players were reaching for the card Raking Canopy? That is a great example of format mastery, of a slowly, subtly changing format where, like, whoa, yo, Spirit's got a Lord? Spirit's got Supreme Phantom. Suddenly that deck that was kind of tier 3 is now on the map, and now it's one of the decks to beat. And not much else has changed in the format, so how do we adjust? Well, you can play a spicy card like Raking Canopy, and that's a great example of what I'm talking about, how mastery is rewarded in a slow and subtly changing format. But now it's like, oops, I guess everybody has a companion, and before that, oops, I guess Uro and Kroxa are everywhere, and before that, well, I guess there's all of these 4 and 5 color snow piles held together by Arkham's Astrolabe that themselves can Blood Moon an opposing deck out of the game, and before that, and again, it all began with War of the Spark. That's where it all went off the rails, my friends. But anyway, you understand the point here. Mastery is something that is not possible in any kind of a long-term sense in our currently volatile format. And that doesn't mean that skill doesn't matter. Skill, in fact, matters a lot, but there's a difference between the skill required to spike a fluctuating meta and to rapidly adjust to being, you can face like Yorion Scapeshift these days. That's a deck that's kind of come up out of nowhere to win some big events. You can face any number of things, and adapting very quickly is its own skill in its own right, and finding the answers or the proactive things to do, perhaps more accurately, the proactive things to do right now, with a plethora of new tools being dropped in your lap every few months. Don't get me wrong, I'm not counter-signaling that, but that is something different. That is a different aspect of becoming a good player than achieving mastery. If you can achieve true mastery with an archetype, stick through it through thick and thin, stick with it through thick and thin, then you are in a position where you can do things like figure out how to beat Bant Spirits in an otherwise settled metagame without changing your deck. And that is, frankly, I think, what almost any modern player would want. I don't see how you wouldn't want that. That rewards you for your reps. And it also is much more financially stable. Now, granted, maybe that's why they don't want to do it. That's kind of maybe that's not why they don't want it to be the status quo. That's kind of a different subject, perhaps, for a different day. But as a platonic ideal, I really, truly think that that's what we need. That's what we want. So I hope that helps underline the distinction between the skill set required to achieve mastery and the desirability of mastery as part of a long-standing format like Modern versus the skills required to adapt quickly to new technology or to incorporate it to your own ends or to find the answers to it and to sequence correctly with and against it. That's a different skill set. That's the skill set of innovation or of swift adaptation. That's very different from mastery. Now, Magic the Gathering has room for both, and no format should have only one or the other. Even in a freshly rotated standard format, within a few days you can develop a kind of novice level mastery relative to somebody who's a few days late to the party. And even in a format like Vintage, there should be some innovation from time to time, some new cards entering the format that require adaptation or that create a new hole in the metagame for a canny player to exploit. We definitely don't want one or the other, but to me, the older the format is, the more it should reward mastery, and Modern is no exception. Modern is not as old as some formats, but it is the most accessible, the most broadly accessible old format. I hope we can really encourage the culture of Wizards, whether, I don't know who's responsible ultimately for this, whether it be play design or PR or the suits or some combination thereof. We need to remind them that Modern is a format for invested players. We've invested a lot of money in our Modern decks. We've invested a lot of time in learning the format, and ultimately, most of us do not want radical change of the type that we've been seeing lately. So, if you disagree, as always, guys, please do let me know. Better audio for the Grim Tidings coming soon, and I otherwise hope you enjoyed it. It's a beautiful day out here. If Modern's got you down, if Magic's got you down, go get outside. Vitamin D is very, very good for you during a pandemic, I can tell you that. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to the patrons. I love you guys. I'm always having fun hanging out on the Discord, no matter how great or how terrible Modern is. I love talking to you. So thanks again, and I will talk to you soon. Hope everybody out there has a wonderful day.